How's it going, guys? Okay, looks like audio is good. Sweet. Let's go ahead and just get rolling. For those of you guys who are just kind of rolling in, my name's Jared Chavez. I am a character artist in the games industry. So I haven't streamed in a little while, but been here and there, like to do creatures, people, different things like that. Today we are going to work on a piece that I had actually started on my personal stream by Tyler Ellis. Made some progress on it last week, but going to try and make some more progress. So for those of you guys who don't know, or who haven't been a part of my streams before and stuff, I, like to just take questions, chat about different things. So if you guys have any questions related to 3D or games or whatever, film industry, game industry, any of that stuff, I'm more than happy to do my best to answer that stuff. But yeah, let's go ahead and hang out. I'm gonna sculpt for maybe an hour or so. See if we can try and get some progress done on this guy. I need to try and tackle the legs and the feet, and the hands. That's kind of the main focus, since this guy is a little bit more asymmetrical, like in the face and stuff. He kind of has offset horns, and this horn's going to end up changing in the future, and things like that. I usually try to kind of tackle the main portion of the body that I could get away with a little bit more symmetry in. And then like the feet, tassels, and things like that, that will probably receive a little bit of a treatment of some asymmetry as well. But yeah, this is kind of where we're at for right now. So like I said, if you guys have any questions, anything you guys want to talk about, make sure to throw that in chat and we can kind of just roll with it, So where I'm going to get started first for this guy is the hand today. He's got these like creepy little lanky fingers, which are pretty cool. So we'll just get started here, see if we can get this area tackled today. Usually when doing the hands, I think one of the cool things about the hands is you can get a lot of like really interesting kind of forms and rhythms and like, a lot of interesting shapes in there. You can really exaggerate them. There's a lot of personality that you can draw from the hands. And so I always enjoy doing them. They're always a lot of fun, but they take a little bit of practice, that's for sure. So how's everyone's Tuesday going? Hopefully good Memorial Day for those who had that off yesterday. If not, hopefully the week has started well for you. So trying to separate some of these forms, you can see right now they're pretty blobby still. The nice thing about this hand is it kind of looks a little bit, weird with like the extra nails and things like that. So I feel like I can probably get away with like a lot of this kind of odd shaping of things. Doesn't have to be too perfect. And I'm going to kind of let that play into the overall look of the character. The weirder, the better. He's kind of a creepy guy, so I think that that'll kind of help it. So right now there's these kind of like pads right here on the hand. That's what I'm going to try and start getting sculpted out, getting some of that form. There's going to be this nice round form, and then we're going to contrast that with this kind of like back of the finger and knuckle area. So I'll define all the knuckles and define those fat pads, and that's usually the first part that I try to kind of get established when I'm doing hands. And then, like I said, this guy, he's got really kind of lanky hands. And in the concept, they're all like really like long, extended fingers. So I feel like I can kind of play into that a little bit, I can make them maybe a little bit crooked, like they aren't exactly perfect. So maybe I can play into some of that since we're not seeing it from like an exact angle in the concept. Okay, this finger's a little beefy. Okay, so this is a little wonky looking. Try and get this like that. Okay. So start defining some of these knuckles on the backside. It's a little bit wonky and some of the like shaping back here is a little bit janky, but we'll start to kind of locate these knuckles, start to even some of this shape out. Okay. Get some of this palm shape sort of defined a little bit. Because he has like these like weird like lanky sort of like bag arms, I kind of got to figure out how all this stuff's going to work back here. Like he obviously doesn't have like real anatomy, but you can start to try and bring some of this in here, make it make sense. Okay. Kind of like that. Looks okay. So looks like we got a decent number of people in here today. So like I mentioned earlier, my name's Jared. For those of you guys who are tuning in who may not have seen me stream before, I am a character artist in the game industry. I do some streaming here on the ZBrush channel, as well as my own personal channel. Which, if you're interested in that, make sure to check out the links in the description. You can find some of my stuff there. I don't remember if I actually included the YouTube link in there, but if you just search Jared Chavez on YouTube, you can find my stuff there as well. That is where I do the primary amount of my streaming at. That's where I started this guy at a couple of days, not a couple of days ago, like a couple of weeks ago, which that's a horrifying image right there. But that's what it looks like, I guess, when you're missing all your pieces. But yeah, so go check that out if you guys are interested. Do a lot of different stuff over there. I do some streams. I stream usually like the pretty much the whole character process to some extent. Not all the time. Life's busy, but I try to stream over there as frequent as I can, and then stream over here when I can. But this is always all ZBrush stuff, which is the best part. But if you're interested in things like texturing, I do a lot of that stuff over on my channel. So yeah, check that out if you're interested. Hey, how's it going, Saboy? Okay, so let's get this knuckle situated. I kind of like this like weird shape that this nail is having, which for this, I decided in my last stream that I was going to do separate nails for it just because I felt like it was going to make a little bit more sense. So to kind of ensure that I keep that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this and start kind of positioning it because I like that shape that I kind of have right now, this kind of like crooked offset sort of like hooked shape from the nail. So I want to try and keep that. So we'll try and get that in place and match it because that's an interesting little happy accident, I guess, that I can kind of lean in with. Yeah, kind of like this. a little bit bigger, so let's try and inflate it. I'm gonna do local symmetry like that. Okay. Let's isolate just this finger, which switch that to that. Okay, so kind of get this thumb in place. Okay, so lower this, we'll just smooth this out so it feels a little bit better. Then we'll kind of rewrap this around the nail so it feels like it's tucked in there. So doesn't make a ton of sense yet, but we at least kind of got some of that look. Maybe make it a little bit thicker towards the tip. Okay, so then let's start to kind of, oh, I keep bringing him back. Let's isolate just the hands again. Okay, so I tend to do that on accident. Let's isolate that. Modify, delete hidden, and then let's duplicate this, mirror it over. So now we got 2 fingers, which that is interesting. So I accidentally did that. So I broke that on accident. So let's fix this real quick. Let's turn off symmetry, mask this, smart resim, boom. Now we got it fixed. So if you guys ever run into issues like that, that's a quick way to fix it. Doesn't always work, but majority of the time you can do a quick fix. Sometimes I accidentally sculpt on a side or turn on local symmetry like I did, and it can cause some issues. So that was a quick way to fix it. Let's see. Hey, I just finished my character sculpting assignment, and thanks to your art test video on ArtStation, it was a breeze for me. Only one thing I kind of struggled with, and that's the documentation. For the documentation, what part do you mean? I'd be happy to expand on it, but I'm glad you found that video series useful. For anyone who's curious as to what they're talking about, it is an ArtStation learning course that I did a couple of years ago, probably about 2 years ago now. And I kind of go through the full process of like doing an art test, which some of this stuff in that video, you know, like I'm doing like a full character, which that was just to kind of show the whole process. But in like a full art test, you probably wouldn't do quite as much as that. You might, depending on what the studio expects. But yeah, if you're interested in that, there is a full video that I did on ArtStation. So yeah, definitely check that out if you're interested. Hey, how's it going? How is this handled in the industry? Are there a lot of meetings, or do you have to create design documents for the asset you create? Oh, so usually the way that it works in industry is you'll be provided like a prompt. Um, and that prompt will like have a character, so it'll have like a concept. Usually it's like either like a torso up character, or sometimes it's just a head, or sometimes it's just a prompt, and it'll give you like a prompt, like, so what is expected from the art test. So like model the character, UV the character, texture the character, so like all the parts of the process that you should go through to create your character. And then it also has like the specifications that you need to hit for that character. So like, for example, you know, in games we are limited, so they'll be like, oh, this should only have 50,000 triangles, 2 texture sets, 3 texture sets, however many. We expect hair cards. You know, you should be using spec gloss workflow, or metallic rough. And so it just gives you kind of some of that, like what you should be hitting in your submission for this, and then that's kind of like how they evaluate things, just to make sure that like you can essentially work in their pipeline more or less. So that's kind of like what the original, like the first part of it, that stuff is usually handed to you. Like you don't have to like figure that stuff out for yourself, which is nice. So but in my experience, that's how I have had art tests happen in the past. So, and I've taken in my professional career, I've only done one. And I did some in college, but yeah, for the most part, they're all usually pretty much the same. That being said, I think art tests are unfortunately dumb. I don't like them, but they are kind of sometimes a little bit of a necessary evil for what we do. So yeah, and one thing I would recommend, and I don't know if I'm necessarily supposed to say this, but I recommend if you can, seeing if the studio will pay you for them, which that's not always going to happen, and there's a good chance that they'll be like, no, we're good. But if you can get them to offer to pay for it, I think it makes it a little bit more viable, because 2 weeks full of work is a lot. The art test that I did, I had 2 weeks to do it. It was a bust, and I had to do modeling. I had to do UVs. I had to do textures. I had to do hair cards, and I had to light and present the character, all while like hitting the specifications that they needed. And like that's a lot to like ask for someone, especially because at the time I was working a full-time job. And so to like ask that while they're doing that, like I spent pretty much all of uh my outside time doing that. So it's kind of a little bit like unrealistic to ask for art tests from people, but like I said, unfortunately in certain cases it is kind of a necessary evil, as much as I don't agree with them, but that it's kind of just the reality of them at some points. Which I will say that the art test that I did take, I didn't even think that I really needed to take it, but I think that the reason that I was asked to take it was because there wasn't enough triple A work in my portfolio. Like I had portfolio work, but I didn't have like completed studio work. So I think that they wanted to just like verify that I could do what they needed. Excuse me. So that's usually kind of like the rhyme and reason behind why they end up doing them. So which was dumb, because I was making work for Back for Blood at the time. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Um, Okay, so that finger's looking a little bit better. I feel like I'm getting a little bit too much volume on a lot of these things. They're kind of like fattening up, which I don't really want. So I'll have to make a pass on that to kind of make them feel a little bit better. But just I want to, usually when I work, I like to get like the anatomical or like realistic sort of forms in place, and then once I have that as like kind of a blueprint, I can start to like refine it. Usually that's kind of how my brain works a little bit better. So I kind of end up biting off more work than I need to by working that way, but just kind of what happens sometimes. uh let's see. I'm learning 3D thing because I study digital art and 3D animation. You ever use Blender? It works. Or ZBrush better for sculpting? So yes, I have used Blender. I actually started in Blender my 3D career when I was in high school. I started using it my senior year of high school for just learning, essentially, because I didn't really know what 3D, like how to do 3D at that point. And so I had a friend who was like, "Oh, you should check out this program called Blender." And I was like, "Okay, sure." And so I checked it out, and that's kind of where I started to dabble in 3D. Um, and I kind of touched all of the spectrums of 3D at that point. Like I tried modeling. I remember I like was watching Blender Guru and stuff like that, and so I was modeling characters on I was modeling like lightsabers and things like that, and I learned to do like simulation work and stuff, and so I kind of like touched all of the different aspects. But it was hard to use because I was using a Mac at the time, and I don't know if Windows was different, but I used to have like to use like the number keypad to spin around the model and like do all kinds of stuff. So there was a lot of like clunky aspects to it. I know that it's gotten a lot better over the years. I don't currently use it just because I use ZBrush and Maya for work, and I don't really feel the like learning a new software. So that's why I don't use it now. There are certain things where I'm like, oh, that would actually be like a really useful tool or way of like rendering that I would like to learn. And there are things that I would use in it, but I just haven't gone over to use it because once you've spent as long as I have like learning software, like learning Maya, learning ZBrush, learning Substance Painter, learning Unreal, learning all these things, like adding another one in is just kind of a pain in the butt. So like unless I have a very specific reason to learn it, I don't know if I ever will make the transition. But like I said, there's certain things where I'm like, oh, that looks really cool, but I just don't take the time to learn it. I'm more like, could I spend time making a character or could I spend time learning a software? So, but in terms of sculpting, I will always say that ZBrush is the best sculpting you can get, and that's not me just being biased on the fact that like I'm on the ZBrush stream right now. I truly have felt that way since I first picked it up. So like I said, I started using Blender when I was in high school, and that same friend, he was like, oh, we were in college and I was starting to learn Maya at that point. I was kind of like a weird like Maya person where I thought everything was made in Maya. And then he was like, hey, you should check out this program called ZBrush. And I was like, wait, that's weird. Like this seems like it's not what they use, but like people are making these like really cool kind of like crazy models. So it must be useful for something. And so I didn't really understand how it fit in. And then I was like, okay, well, I should pick it up and check it out. And I did. And I have never regretted that purchase since I made it. And I love ZBrush, and I love sculpting in ZBrush, and I love making characters in ZBrush. So yeah, I will always say that ZBrush is better in my opinion, but to each their own. So yeah. So hopefully that gives some perspective into my little bit of my history with ZBrush and even Blender. So um that's actually a refresher here. Yeah, hopefully the art test stuff, a little bit of insight from someone who's taken them, or someone in industry and stuff. Most people that work in games, they think they're stupid. Vast majority of people think that because it just kind of feels like a waste of time. But like I said, sometimes they can be necessary. So uh what do you think about stylized and real and character? I like both of them. So if you actually look at my portfolio, my kind of bread and butter is more realistic stuff. And the reason for that is purely because of the fact that, um, well, there's a couple of things. So, like on a personal level, I always kind of like struggled with stylized stuff. I think because the fact that like stylized stuff doesn't tend to exist, it's a little bit more like your own personal intuition and interpretation of things. Whereas like realistic stuff, it's like if I want to make a human, I can just look at pictures of people, and it's easier to kind of do. So for me, that was always kind of the route that I leaned, purely because of the fact that I felt like making humans and like realistic stuff was easier. You know, there's always real photo reference of things to look at. Whereas like stylized stuff, like I said, you're kind of embellishing it based on your own tastes and things like that. So yeah. So that is kind of my take on it. But yeah, like I said, I actually like to do stylized work. Like this is more of a stylized piece. So I actually haven't shown the concept, but this is the concept for it. So you can see more stylized. I like to do this stuff just to kind of like sharpen my skills, you know. I don't do anything stylized professionally like in studio. You know, like Back for Blood was more realistic. Where it was like a stylized realism. It was still more realistic than it was stylized, and that's kind of like more my style than like full Riot stylization or like Blizzard stylization. But I do like doing those things. You know, I like to do hand painted stuff when I can. I'm not good at hand painted stuff by any means, but I like to test myself and practice it. You know, takes a lot of skill and a lot of effort, at least for me it does. Probably going to end up spending the whole stream on these hands. If you've ever watched my other streams, you know that I am a slow sculptor. You guys are probably used to, you know, some of the other people in here that come and like speed sculpt stuff. That is not me, unfortunately. I am not that fast of a sculptor. It takes me a while to get something that I'm happy with. So we'll try and kind of add some indication that there's this nail popping out here, which let's see. So this, we're actually going to drag it back a little bit. Oops, not that. We want it to kind of feel a little bit more intact, like the nail kind of actually part of the finger. Let's do the same thing with this one. So it feels like it's sunken in there. Okay, so we're at an okay amount of topology. Try and divide this another time so we can get a little bit more in here. I need to probably put the other nails on there just so it feels a little bit more complete. Let's see. Where was I at? Someone else told me that I would need to have the ability to do full character in 2 weeks. That for a real game, that's a lie. No, I have never once. Well, actually, that's not true. I've spent 2 weeks on a character, but it was like a quick character. It was an easy character, wasn't a main character. Depending on where you work, you know, I feel like I've heard things about places like Blizzard where for WoW, they have pretty quick turnaround times, which, you know, take that with a grain of salt. I've never worked there. I don't actually know. So I've heard that before. So there are places where they may have quick turnaround times, but I can tell you in most places you're going to be looking at more like a couple of months turnaround time for an entire character. So I that person who told you that is probably doesn't know what they're talking about. So yeah, I would always take things that people say with a grain of salt. You know, like the biggest thing that I always recommend, or not recommend, but like that you always hear, especially when you're learning, is like, oh, don't use triangles in your models, in your topology. That's not true. That's like a weird urban myth that came up. You can use triangles. It's not a big deal. At the end of the day, your stuff becomes triangulated. You just want to make sure that like you have good edge flow. So there you will hear things that, you know, you just got to kind of try to figure out what the underlying thought process is behind it. And like someone telling you that you should expect to have only 2 weeks for a character, yeah, that is not true. I don't think a lot of people would work in games if that was the reality. I apologize if you guys can hear my dog barking. She's under my feet barking at something for some reason. But if they did mean like a full character in an art test, like I said, mine was not the reality of like art tests that I've seen. I'm sure that there might be art tests where they do, but it's going to be a character that's manageable in 2 weeks. Whereas like the studio that I was going for was like photorealism, like or a high realism. So 2 weeks, like doing a bust in 2 weeks was manageable. A full character was not manageable. Like I said, I was working like my full 9 to 5 job until probably like 6 o'clock. And then I was working on that. Like when I woke up, when I went to bed, I was working on it until probably like 10 or 11 o'clock every night. So I was working on it for as like a full-time second job. And all it was like from the neck up essentially. So yeah. But again, that's my experience. Maybe other people have had different experiences, but I have never heard of those experiences. So still tons of work, but the 2 week for a full character feels insanely crunch mode for an artist. Yeah, that is definitely not super realistic. And like I said, when I did that art test, it was more to just show like more of the process of the character than like this is an exact replica of what you could expect on an art test for like what the character would look like. But you know, that I probably could have done things differently when I made that video. But it hopefully people learned a lot from it. Or something. Even a little something. That's all I really cared about. So I have my character live in game engine with hair physics and it's amazing. Now I think that ZBrush is just 30% of the path. Yeah, I mean it is. You know, you're really only going to be doing your sculpting for your model in here, but I would rather do it. I would rather spend most of my time in ZBrush than pretty much anything else. So I just like making the models. I like to do all the other stuff too. I love texturing, but sculpting has always been what I find probably the most fun when it comes to characters and character art. Okay, let's turn this stuff off because this stuff is in my way. So got a little wonky thumb. Maybe move this up just a little bit more, kind of a little bit better proportions. Smooth all this side out. Let's do polish that. Want to kind of emphasize this nice little sharp edge here. Yeah, like that. So this whole arm, I'm gonna have to like probably do another pass. I kind of want it to be a little bit thinner and like sharper on certain areas. So we'll have to refine this a little bit more, but it's feeling okay right now. It's kind of a weird thing to like sculpt something super thin, which that's always what's hard for me. You know, I had mentioned like with stylized stuff. I get really attached to the idea of like the silhouette when it comes to stylized things. And so like I kind of drive myself nuts, like not feeling like I can 100% match it. And like with this character, feel like there's a lot of good stuff that's matching, but the arms, like, they feel so thin in the concept, which that, like, you know, paper thin, I'm not really going to be able to translate super well. But the closer we can get, the better. I feel like we're kind of getting there. Doesn't feel like it's like entirely broken. This side's a little wonky though. Like this. Oops, that's the wrong brush. So do something like that. Try and thin this out a little bit more. Can you give me some guidance on how to approach face sculpting? Yeah. Faces are probably one of the harder things to sculpt, I think, and um or at least they're the hardest thing to first start learning, in my opinion. And that's because there's a lot of subtlety and nuance when it comes to sculpting faces. So usually what I would recommend learning is understanding like the planes of the face, you know, like where those small planes are and shift around and things like that. That'll really help you out. Because like I said, they're all very subtle, especially when you go from like a male face to a female face. So understanding that, understanding, you know, like the musculature that's affecting the forms of the face, as well as like the skull underneath it, that usually plays a really big impact into how things look. But what I would recommend doing, like a site that I would recommend that would probably help you out there, is Anatomy for Sculptors. I think that that's probably one of the best books to own. I actually have it here. Yeah, so this book, Anatomy for Sculptors, really, really good book. Lots of, you know, great breakdowns on like anything from anatomy to understanding like the skeleton to like the planes of the face. So like you can see, I don't think you guys can actually see it, but there's like breakdowns of how the nose is shaped and like the planes of the nose and like those primary forms and secondary forms, and things like that. So I would recommend that. It's a great book. That's probably the main resource that I would recommend checking out. But yeah, those are kind of the keys to sculpting faces. One of the main things that I usually see that people struggle with is the perceived depth of the face. So usually like people will just sculpt from the front plane, and because of that there's a lack of depth for like a lot of the forms, like the mouth, because like the mouth, if you look at how it forms, it kind of like forms like this shape, so it like recedes back on the face. So usually people like sculpt it on a front facing plane, so like everything kind of feels very flat from different angles. It may look great from the front view, but like if you start to turn it around, that's where it usually kind of breaks down. So let's see. One. Where was I at? Love your streams. I joined as a character artist in a small studio, so how to push my anatomy knowledge. Like I said, I would check out Anatomy for Sculptors. That's usually a great place to start. Take anatomy classes. I took one anatomy class through CGMA, CG Masters Academy. With Christian Bull. He's a really, really great instructor. I would check his stuff out if you're interested in like furthering that knowledge. Just practice anatomy studies, practice and understand bony landmarks, where your muscles attach and insert at, how they're kind of overlapping each other. And that usually helps out a lot. Still looks good, although stylized is not your forte. Well, I appreciate that, Joshua. Let's see. Tell me the writer of that book. I don't know if there's a writer for it. If you actually just search, oh yeah. I don't know how to pronounce their names, but I will show you that. So, if you want to find this book, if you just search anatomy for sculptors, they have a full website. Even on ArtStation, they have a full website. So I would make sure to check that out. They really, really great resource to check out. Will you use ZBrush for iPad? Yes, I will whenever I get it. I'm as excited for that as everyone else. I think that that'll be an awesome feature to just sit on my couch and essentially do what I'm doing now. You know, not have to be tethered to a full machine. So, hey, what's up, Logan? How's it going, man? So yeah, definitely excited for that. I look forward to being able to, sculpt anywhere, everywhere, sculpt in the airport, sculpt in, on the couch, sculpt in bed, sculpts at my family's house when I go and travel, different things like that. So definitely excited for it. Look forward to the future that they have for ZBrush. Hey, what's up, Alex? How's it going, man? Oh, yep. Alex posted for me the names of them. Thank you. I appreciate that. Different channel threw me off at first. Yeah, I have been meaning to stream over here on the ZBrush channel for a little while. I haven't streamed for probably like, I don't know, I feel like it was maybe since like the beginning of April, maybe even before that, maybe it was March. So I was like, oh, I need to get over there and stream. But we're back working on our Pokemon. So yeah. Let's do, oops. Shape these hands a little bit better. Those back knuckles look real wonky. And like this is a prime example that kind of relates to like the faces, checking your model from different angles, seeing how it's looking. And that's usually what I recommend for like any sort of modeling, is just understanding what it looks like from different points of view. Because if you just like sculpt from this angle, you end up with something like this, where like this shape is really wonky and looks really bad. And you got to always check your model, make sure it looks good from every angle, which I don't even think that this is like actually like physically possible how this hand's bent right now, but we're going to make it work. We're going to make it look good. Uh So we'll try and get some of this like small little pocket. Actually, how long have we been going for? What time is it? 9:06. Okay, so I'll probably stream for like another like maybe 20 minutes or so. So, as you guys have seen, I'm a chatterbox. I like to talk. So if you guys have questions about anything, please feel free to let me know. Doesn't have to be pertaining necessarily to ZBrush. It could be about whatever. But yeah, I like to talk and keep talking clearly, because that's all I've done for the last like 40 minutes. So okay. So we've done some forms here. Let's see what we originally looked like on these hands. Let's open this so we can kind of do a A/B comparison just from our sculpting today. Like I said, I'm a slow sculptor, so it takes me a while to get things to look nice, but like to always check and make sure that we're making some progress, which we are. So that is what we're after: progress, and progress alone. Any rendering courses that you recommend? Let's see. Rendering. I know that so on my YouTube channel, I do some rendering stuff there. Also, Jay Hill, he also has some good rendering stuff that you might be able to check out. Um, let me see if I can remember his name. Give me 1 second. Um, I have some Unreal stuff that might be useful. William. William Foucher. He's a really useful lighter. I believe he's in lighting, but he has some good rendering stuff on his page. I would check his stuff out there. Let's see. Who else is there? Shoot, I don't know if there's a ton of great resources that I can think of right off the top of my head for rendering. That one's kind of a little bit difficult. I'll think on it, and if I can think of any more, I'll let you know. I will say though, like I said, I've mentioned it before. I recommend checking out maybe some CGMA courses. They might have stuff on there that you might find useful. That is where I took courses after college to get better at being a character artist. So might be some useful stuff there that you might be interested in taking. Maybe not, I don't know, but I uh definitely would check it out. Definitely would check it out, see if something might fit for you. Um let's see. Hello Jared, what is your workflow? You first step in Dynamesh, second retopology and divide. So usually the way that my workflow works for sculpting, at least depending on the character, well actually not even just depending on the character, usually my workflow in its entirety is to start with Dynamesh, get some primary forms, things like that, and then usually I'll get to a point where I'll run ZRemesher on it so that I have some clean topology that I can start moving up and down on, just because I like to make modifications at like a low subdivision level. So then it allows me to kind of modify and shift things and make bigger sweeping changes than if I was using something like Dynamesh. So I try to get like a good rough shape quickly, and then I will Z-remesh it so that I can start refining like through these hands, like you'll see me, I'm going up and I'm going down and up and around in every which way. And so that's kind of my overall workflow when it comes to uh doing characters, which I just noticed this. Okay, I actually need to reshape this finger some more. It's not looking quite like I want it to. But yeah, so that's usually the general workflow. Depending on the character, like I can show some examples. So like I showed this here. This was at the beginning of this session, which that's not that far back, but like before that was this, which I still had topology on at this point. And before that was like this was the Dynamesh shape that I got. So I got kind of a shape, and then I moved into, this where I had topology, and then I still have topology, and I've just kind of been refining it. But I'll get to a certain point where like I probably need a cleaner topology. So I'll do another like Z-remesh to just try and clean up some of the shapes and forms that I've sculpted since then. So that's usually the main workflow, but I'll show an example of a little bit of a deeper look. Let's see. Should I show something new that people really haven't seen, or should I show something old? I'll show something newer. So this was a dinosaur piece that I was working on, an Allosaurus piece. So this is kind of the initial like Dynamesh sculpt, and then I'll just kind of open it up as it like goes along the process. So still Dynamesh, resolving some of the forms. Um, Still Dynamesh, still resolving some of the forms. Let's see. Still Dynamesh, still resolving forms, and then I'll skip ahead a little bit. Now you can see I got a Z-remesh topology on here, so that I can start to like move up and down on the forms and start to refine things a little bit cleaner. And then like I'll jump ahead like a decent number of saves, something like this. let's see, how crazy is this one? So then like at this point, I'm still probably using the same topology that I had there between these two. Yeah, you can see that this is the same topology, and I'm just starting to sculpt in the detail. So this is my, excuse me, this is my general workflow for stuff like this and pretty much anything is I just get kind of a good shape, and once I'm happy with it, you know, once I'm happy with like the forms and stuff, I'll start to Z remesh, and then I kind of like create an iteration loop from that. So like say I start to like, you know, bring big shapes out like this, then I would, you know, be like, okay, well, I need to accommodate that topology. So I would run a Z remesher that would accommodate that. And then, you know, just start sculpting on top of it. And then that's kind of my overall workflow and loop for how I approach things. So yeah, it's nothing too crazy. I keep it pretty simple, but I don't like jump between softwares or anything like that. I primarily just stick in ZBrush and let Z remesher do its, you know, do its thing. So let's see. You have a very nice collection. Well, I appreciate that. Tell us about your gaming experience. Do you mean like where I've worked, like working on Back for Blood? Because I can talk about that. Oh my God, it's Jared. I wanted to watch your stream. Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad that you could make it. I haven't streamed on here in a little while. It's been probably about a month and a half or so. So I'm glad to come and hang out for a little while, you know. I always say like, oh, I want to try and stream more, but you know, life's hard. Sometimes it gets in the way, and I don't always have the most time to do it, which is unfortunate. But I try to when I can, and today was that day. So let's shape this finger a little bit more. Move these knuckles over a touch. Feels a little bit better. Let's see. That Dinah has a facial expression, you know. I do. It looked kind of weird, honestly. When you look at the concept, it kind of looked like he was smiling. Um, which, you know, is a little bit different, but I think once the piece was finished, which if you're interested in seeing that piece, you definitely can. The full piece is up on my ArtStation. And I do need to do a breakdown of that video, which I'm trying to get some stuff started for that for my YouTube channel. So if you're interested in seeing more about that piece, definitely you know, check out the YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see some more of that stuff over there. But if you don't care about dinosaurs, that's totally fine too. Let's bring this down a little bit. Bring this up a touch. Okay, so we've done some sculpting on the hands. I feel like those are moving along. I'm going to switch it up a little bit, sculpt on some of these chunky little legs. Try and make these look a little bit nicer, because this is the other main part that I need to get situated. Because once I get these two pieces like intact, then I'll start moving back onto the head. But I like to get these things kind of situated, because then I can start doing like some of the asymmetry sculpting on the head, whereas like the body, it's not quite as important. So let's see. Move these up just a touch. Get some more of this kind of shape in here. Okay. Try and shape some of these toes. See, in this area is like one of those areas that although it's like really simple in the concept, I always have a hard time kind of finding what I feel like looks right when doing the 3D portion of it. Mainly because of the fact that like I feel like sometimes things are so simple and I want to overcomplicate them, you know? I don't know if you guys deal with that, but that for me is definitely something that's a little bit trickier to kind of tackle. Don't know what that was. See, so now this is like an area where I would need to do a retopology on. Just because I'm starting to like pull some of this like tethery, torn sort of feet thing out. And because of that, I want to make sure that I have enough topology that like right now I'm just stretching it. So I would want to accommodate that, but I won't do that on stream. Let's see. I'm looking at the Allosaurus head. Will you show how you do the substance painting on stream? On stream, I won't be showing it on stream, but I will be showing it like in videos and stuff. I'll do like a kind of a breakdown video for my overall process for it, and then for if you're like interested in seeing like the full process of it, that stuff is going to be on my membership my membership part of my YouTube channel as well. So that section I'm kind of funneling over like my full process videos. So like this piece, you know, like you guys are probably just seeing like this hour of sculpting. I'll show like the entire process over on the membership side. And then on the regular channel, I usually just show like a small snippet breakdown, kind of talking through stuff. But that's not like me showing the full sort of process. So if that interests you guys, that stuff's over there. But that's where the Allosaurus stuff will be. So yeah, I did a Gengar piece a couple of like last year, like last October or something, and the legs for that character were also the area that I kind of struggled with the most. Which the legs weren't super complicated, but for whatever reason, there's something about like small, chubby, simple little legs that I just am not that great at, I guess. And so one of the things like with this character too that I'm kind of trying to convey, which you can kind of see back through here and a little bit like up here is like this kind of sort of feeling of it's like a loose bag. So I'll try and encapsulate some of that stuff like back here on the back of the legs as well. Um, to kind of help emphasize that like wrinkling feeling, which I think will help me kind of get away with um, a lot of the issues that I'm running into, but want to get a nice good shape on here. So kind of crinkle this over itself. Let's use this. Okay, so we're gonna go for about like a couple more minutes. So if you guys have any last questions, feel free to throw those in. And if not, we will start buttoning things up here in a second. Want to try and get some of this stuff in place. I'm texturing a golden armor on a Power Ranger. Can you give me some tips for gold material? I don't know if I necessarily have like tips specifically for gold. Usually when it comes to metals, I like to do a lot of kind of like nuanced color variation to the surface. Um, I like to kind of like introduce not just like a yellow color. So like a little bit of like oranges and yellows and maybe like even some reds and stuff in there. Maybe even like some more like towards the green and stuff. But yeah, I usually when I do metals, I don't just tend to do just like a generic one color to kind of suit it. So I do that as well as I would say if you want a metal to look good, which if you want any material to really look good in PBR, your roughness map is going to be incredibly important. So make sure to not skimp on that. Never skimp on the roughness. Never. Because that is what is going to make your materials look good. At least in my opinion. If you don't have that, they're gonna look funny. So do you think you'll do a workflow video on Unreal 5 integrating the character right through to rendering? There aren't many videos on that. I have gotten that question before, and I definitely would like to at some point. I have done some videos pertaining to it on my like live streams. Like I did a xenomorph character where I kind of like was working through doing all that, and I'm still editing that video even though I finished that character a long time ago, but I'm still kind of like editing the videos from that process on my channel. So I do have some coming up for that. I don't know if I'll necessarily show like bringing it into Unreal, but I will be showing like the lighting portion of it as well as I showed like setting up the UDIM portion of it for the character. So I would check that out. Maybe that's a little bit helpful. I would also recommend checking out Jason Hill's Unreal tutorial video that he did. He kind of like walks through that process, and my process doesn't really differ very much from his, so you're going to kind of get the same information between the two of our workflows. So yeah, I would recommend checking those videos out. Maybe they'll be helpful. If not, what I would recommend doing is taking a look at their documentation. Their documentation for Unreal is really useful and really helpful to kind of like get you up and running if that's what you're looking to do. So check that stuff out. That'll probably get you a good kind of starting point. But hopefully at some point, I just haven't done an Unreal character since that Xenomorph character, and right now the characters that I'm doing, I don't plan on doing in Unreal, just because they're going to be a little bit more oriented towards other workflows that I'm doing and testing out. So, but maybe in the future, maybe I can knock out a character in Unreal and do like a full sort of process breakdown. Might be helpful for people. So, with that said, I think we're probably at a pretty good point. So let's see where we're at here. ZBrush sketches. So this was where we started. Let's see. So I haven't touched the face at all, but you can see we're starting to refine some of these forms, some of these shapes, the silhouette, got some nice like plane changes and things like that. So we're getting there. Still got a ways to go on him, but like I mentioned, I'm slow at sculpting and I am a little bit more meticulous about things than I probably should be, but that's just how I work. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or ArtStation. I also do have a Discord, which I don't have a link for. I can share that real quick to you guys. And you guys can take a look at that if you're interested in joining as well. But yeah, thank you guys for all the wonderful questions. Definitely appreciate it. It always makes streaming a little bit easier. But like I said, if you guys are interested, make sure to join the Discord. I answer and review work there and talk about things. Also, you guys can find me on Instagram. I share a lot of little like snippet tutorial things on there. Also, the YouTube video has more like long form content. So if you guys enjoy any of that stuff, texturing, sculpting, overall character art workflows, make sure to check that out. But thank you guys for hanging out. This is a great one. Hopefully I'll be back soon. Maybe with this guy, maybe with something different. I don't know, but I'll see you guys then.